Yet again, more proof that Disney does not know what Star Wars fans actually want. In fact, they keep giving us the exact opposite. In a recent interview from comicbook.com, Amanda Sandberg and Leslie Headland answered questions about the upcoming Acolyte show. And when pressed on some very specific questions, they answered the exact opposite what we would want. And in fact, it's the reason behind all of this that is the actual problem, that is one of the real reasons that Star Wars fans are looking at this show and wondering, why would I want to watch this? What is there here for me as a Star Wars fan that really gets me excited, particularly when we're looking at this era, this time frame, 100 years set before the prequels? What about this is really going to draw me in? How are you going to build a bridge to the Star Wars fans who you want to bring to the table? Or is this more just, I don't care about what's been, and I'm just going to make my own thing and not really want to bring in already existing Star Wars fans who might have had some issues with what's already been made? And that's part of my issue, is I think it's the latter. I don't think Disney really cares about its fan base. It only cares about the bottom line, which ironically enough, if you just took care and really built a good product and really told amazing stories, cough, cough, like Andor, and marketed it and thought about what fans wanted, as opposed to just pushing ahead with whatever you think Star Wars is, it would actually meet the requirements and do exactly what you want, which is bring in revenue. Listen very closely to what Leslie Headland actually says, and we're going to pair this with a quote she had for an IGN article, and you'll start to see this full picture come together. Let's take a look.
And not that I'm counting, I'm going to end on this, not that I'm counting, but a certain green Jedi Master would be about 764 years old at the time this story is taking place.
I love that you checked the actual map of it. That's awesome.
Could a character like Yoda or other familiar faces from the Star Wars world show up in The Acolyte?
Can you imagine?
Mm-hmm. I can't.
Can you imagine if they were like, no problem, you can use Yoda? Not a big deal. Go for it.
Yeah.
No, there is not. We are pulling characters from the High Republic and characters from EU, but that's it.
I think it's so awesome that you just flat out answered that question. Thank you for that. It's so rare that we actually get a full definitive answer. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And this show's awesome. So thank you for your great work on it. I can't wait to see the rest.
Thanks.
No Yoda. No legacy characters. No connection to what Star Wars has been in the films, in the canon. Instead, we're going to rely heavily on what Disney wanted to get rid of in the first place, which is the EU, also known as Legends. But why? And even there, Leslie Headland is joking that, oh yeah, they would just let us use Yoda. Well, why not? Why would Yoda be off the table 100 years previous to the prequels? Yoda would be very prominent in the Jedi Order. Yoda is an important figure and a connection to the Skywalker saga, which is Star Wars. And I know there's a desire to distance itself.
Let the past die. Kill it if you have to.
Disney has tried this with the sequel trilogy, to kill the past, to let it die, to move on, to replace the Skywalker saga with
Rey Skywalker.
But if you really want to create a Star Wars show that is going to be, I don't know, good, including characters that were clearly around during the time that you've set in place, must happen. It has to happen. To ignore that is simply to say, hey, we're just going to pretend like it doesn't exist. And in fact, I think it's going to do something very problematic that Leslie Headland has even been quoted as saying she doesn't want to do. So this is what is so confusing to me, because in one side she's going to say, no, we're just going to use EU. We're going to stick to these things. We're not going to mess with the legacy characters. And hints it almost as if it's a higher up decision that you're not allowed to use Yoda. If that's the case, then this is a Kathleen Kennedy decision that I think is wrong. I think Yoda should be present here. I think the fear of not using Yoda is a problem. And why? Because they already know that fans aren't going to get behind these depictions of Star Wars based on how they've been handling it, especially based on the trailer we've seen. And some people are going to say no one's given this show a fair chance. Well, hold on a second. Well, we tried to give shows a fair chance and they fumbled the bag again and again and again. They fumbled the bag with the sequel trilogy. And so of course fans are going to be skeptical and upset. But it's this next quote from the IGN article that I think is really, really telling. Here's what Leslie Headland says. There were two reasons I wanted to see it in that particular time and for that way from the prequels. One, I didn't want to mess with any canon. Really? Headland said. The other thing that I loved about this period was the lack of legacy characters. I was too nervous to take them on, but also I feel like we've seen a lot of that. The High Republic felt like a sandbox I could easily jump into. Here's the problem. Here's the major problem. The High Republic is not just a sandbox you can do anything you want in. Instead, it has major implications for how we understand the prequels. It has major implications for how the Jedi Council operates in the time of the prequel films. If you go to The Phantom Menace and you watch that film, as I actually just recently did, you see that the way that the Jedi Council is operating in that time is because they've grown somewhat complacent. They've grown comfortable because there has been no threat for 1,000 years. But now you might be wondering, well, wait a second. It's only 100 years ago, there's this huge murder mystery, apparently, where Jedi were being killed. Wouldn't you think that would have set off the radars and the alarm bells? That, wait, it wasn't that long ago that something happened regarding the Sith. And the Sith are mentioned multiple times in these interviews, and a lot has to do with what we've seen in the trailers. There are Sith present. So to avoid legacy characters out of fear of messing them up, why? Why are you afraid about messing them up? If you know Star Wars, and if you understand the prequels and the original trilogy, and you have an understanding of the EU, which is what part of the problem to the sequel trilogy was. They just cast everything aside and tried to rewrite everything instead of using what was established. So from that standpoint, I'm glad that the EU and the High Republic is being considered in this era. But it's very strange that you would consider those things, but not Yoda. That Yoda will not even appear? Now, you might say, well, she's just making this up. She's joking. I really don't think so. I think that is a definitive answer that Yoda is not around. That the Grand Master of the Jedi is not even to be bothered by Jedi being murdered and killed by someone who's using the dark side, who's giving into the dark side of the Force, who is, in all appearances, a Sith, and to think that it has no canon implications. Whether or not you like the prequel films, whether or not you like the sequels, no matter where you stand on it, one thing is true, and you cannot deny this. There was a foundation to the prequels that did not exist for the sequels. And that is a major reason why the prequel trilogy is still widely accepted by fans, even though there's major flaws in many of those movies. Whereas when you look at the sequel trilogy, the flaws in those movies are groundbreaking and canon breaking because there is no actual foundation. And so what's happening now in the Acolyte, you're rejecting the foundation of the prequels, which you shouldn't, because this is kind of a prequel to the prequels. This has canon implications. This could change things. It's not just an empty sandbox. It's all interconnected. And this is one of the things that Disney is just not understanding. And so on one side, I feel bad for Leslie Headland that she felt handcuffed to not even be able to use Yoda, which seems like a just complete fear-based retaliation. And I get it. Folks on YouTube and in comment sections have been railing against Disney for some of the choices they've made, but they've brought this on themselves. And I will be the first with a review on here. If this show is good, I will give it its credit. I will put aside some of the ridiculousness that has already been shown in the trailers. I will put aside some of the comments that have been made by people in power at Disney, and I will look at this show for what it is and tell you my honest opinion. And if this is a well-made show, if this truly is, like I said in my previous video, a Jedi version of Andor, I will be sitting here telling you the truth, that I was wrong, that this show is actually good. And I'm surprised. I wasn't expecting it, but it's good and you should go watch it. I'll tell you the truth. Because when I went into Ahsoka, I was excited. And as that show went on, there were good moments in that show. But I also told you the truth that I thought there were some pretty bad moments and that Dave Filoni was at fault for many of them. I'll tell you my honest opinions. I'll tell you what I think. And what I think about this is that it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to approach a show in the Star Wars universe that happens within the lifetime of major canon characters, and to think it's not going to have any implication, and to think you can just walk away and be like, we're not going to use them. They're off somewhere else doing something else. Those are my thoughts. Now it's your turn. Take to the comments. Tell me what you think about this, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching all the way through. I really appreciate it on the way out if you'd hit that like button down below. Thanks so much. I'll catch you on the next one. Remember, the Force will be with you always.